Rejoice with me, for my lost sheep has been found. We are doing a series right now on the windows that you see around you. And today I'm talking about the window right over here. And if you can't turn and see it, it's the second one on this side. But it's also reprinted on a card in your bulletin, so you can look real close at it. And of course, we just had the wonderful interpretation of the lost, the 99, and the one that was found. But this story is about sheep. Now, if you notice the word on that, the word on the stained glass window is joy. It could have been found, could have been lost, could have been the shepherd. The word is joy. Rejoice with me, for I found the sheep who was lost. Jesus is telling a parable. Now, Jesus told a lot of parables, and most of the time, he did not explain them. He simply let them be out there. Once in a while, some of the disciples would, to help us out, will say, "Excuse me, I didn't understand that." And then Jesus will explain it. But most of the time, he simply tells a story. This allows all the listeners, wherever they are in life, to enter into the story, to find their place in the story, and to take to heart Jesus' meaning. So a parable does not lay blame or extol anyone except God. Now, Jesus was a carpenter. So wouldn't you think if Jesus was going to tell a story, he would say, measure twice and cut once? Or count all your fingers after you use the bandsaw? Those are things a carpenter would talk about. But instead, he talks about sheep. Well, the truth is, in an agricultural place like they were, and in a very close community, even if you weren't a shepherd, you knew about sheep. There were sheep all over the place. And you knew three characteristics about sheep. The first is sheep love to be part of a flock. If you have a whole room full of cats and there's a bolt of lightning that strikes, the cats will run. They will hide up on the shelves. They'll go under the sofa. They'll hide under the bed. Anything to be safe and secure. If you have a flock of sheep and a bolt of lightning, the sheep will come together. The sheep will huddle as close as they can to each other to feel secure and safe. So the first thing we know about sheep is they like to be in the flock. The second thing we know is what I got from my husband, who grew up on a farm and is supposed to know about sheep, right? So I said, "Tell me all about sheep." And he said, "Sheep are stupid." Okay, thanks. So I had to go Google sheep to find out. But he was right. Sheep don't have any initiative of their own. They don't make conscious decisions. So no sheep gets up in the morning and says, "Yep, I'm going to leave the flock today and go out and seek my fortune in the world." Sheep just don't do that. What sheep do, though, is get distracted, and they nibble themselves lost. So there's a clump of grass right here, and they chomp, chomp, chomp for a while. And then, oh, there's a clump of grass over there. And they chomp, chomp, chomp over here. And then, whoop, whoop, grass. They chomp, chomp, chomp over here. Now, if the flock is here and there's a large rock, the sheep goes behind the rock and he's lost. If he can't see the rest of the sheep, he's lost. So the third thing we know about sheep is that when a sheep is lost, they do not have the ability or the desire to find their way back. Even though they prefer the flock, they will simply sit down on the other side of the rock. If the sheep is hurt, he might bleat, but if not, he'll just sit there and wait for someone to come and find him, which is why it's so important for the shepherd to count the sheep, because he won't be aware that one is missing unless he personally counts and counts again and again and again. So 3 things about sheep. She left the flock. They don't have the intelligence to wander away, and they don't have intelligence to come back. Essentially, sheep are stupid. In this parable, however, Jesus is using these sheep to invite people into the story. So who's listening to the story on this day that he tells it? Well, one group that's listening is the Pharisees and the scribes. Now, the Pharisees and the scribes have come down to Jerusalem, and they do not have good intentions. They are coming to look at Jesus, to find out what's going on with him, to perhaps trap him in something, to find something he says that they can get him for. They're already after him. And so they come down and listen to this story about sheep. Now, these are very righteous people who know they are very righteous and have made it their job to make sure other people are being as righteous as they are, which they are not. So they will identify with the righteous sheep who stayed home. They are 99ers like they've got on jerseys. They are completely the righteous people who have stayed home. And in fact, they might even look at this shepherd and go, "What? Why would you leave the 99 in the wilderness to be attacked and go after one sheep? That doesn't make any sense." So the Pharisees that listen find themselves in the 99. That's not who Jesus is talking to in the story, though. In the story, Jesus is talking to the tax collectors and sinners. The Pharisees are just overhearing the whole thing and trying to trap him. Now, the tax collectors and sinners have come for a different reason. They have come because they've heard about this kingdom, a new kingdom, a kingdom where they might be included. Because remember, because of the things they have done and who they are in their occupations, they are excluded from the temple. So now, here's someone who might be welcoming them in. Well, of course, they would identify with our sheep over the shoulders. They would see themselves as those who got distracted by money or wealth or something else and wandered away. And now Jesus is saying, yes, you have a place. Welcome. You can be in my kingdom. And more than that, I will come searching for you and bring you in. So there's a third group listening to this story. There was Pharisees, and there were the tax collectors. And then because someone wrote down in Luke's gospel all these words and included this story, we are listening. And so we get to be a part of this story too. So there's the picture, the sheep, the one lamb over the shepherd's shoulders. Where do we see ourselves? I could make a good case for us being 99ers. I mean, we're here, right? And maybe during those college years we didn't attend every Sunday, but we're here now. And so looking back at the last week, sure, give me a 99. I'm in with the righteous. But I could make a case for us being a lost and found sheep. Remember, the sheep don't leave intentionally. They just get distracted. They just get distracted. And have we had a time at all this week when there was something good we could have done, a way we could have helped, and we were just too busy, Was there a time when we looked out on the world and didn't see people or groups with the eyes of compassion that Christ has for us, but rather with condemning and judgment? Was there a time when we had the television or the newspaper open and just didn't look because all the mess in the world was too complicated and really made us feel threatened in our own security? Was there a moment we became distracted from centering on God's love for the world? Perhaps we too can see ourselves as the sheep that is brought back. But remember the word above the pictures. The word is joy. The word is joy. There is great rejoicing in being back here together. There is great rejoicing in our celebration of our worship services today. That's why we call our Eucharistic time the celebration of Holy Eucharist. We don't call it the performance or the repetition or the anything else. We call it the celebration of Holy Eucharist. Because it is those moments that we as people come together and we as people of God come to God. And in that moment, God touches us in the most intimate way possible by allowing His body and blood to become part of us. This is why we rejoice. This is why we celebrate. And our liturgy is full of these rejoicing words because once again this week, Jesus has found us and brought us back, not because of anything we did to be deserving, but by God's grace alone. And when it's by God's grace alone, it cannot be lost any more than God will change in his very nature. So we come rejoicing. We say, lift up your hearts. We lift them to the Lord. We celebrate with angels and archangels and all the company of heaven. There's everyone who's celebrating that once again, we as the lost are found. If we are lost, make us vulnerable enough to be found. If we are found, make us humble enough to be grateful. And if we are rejoicing, make us grateful enough to celebrate with our whole being. Let us bless the Lord. Thanks be to God. Amen.